but dry, and it felt like that silk and India rubber stuff mixed together. And it was such a bright red that at first I didn't see the blood on it. When I did, I knew he were a goner. His chest were all stove in, smashed to pieces. One of the old tree roots must have jabbed him as the current flung him down. I thought he were dead already, but then he opened up his eyes. A funny color they were, greeny yellow, and I swear, Reverend, when he opened them eyes, I felt he was readin' my mind. I thought maybe he might be one of them circus fellers in their flying contraptions that hung on at the bottom of a balloon. He spoke to me in English, kind of choky and stiff, not like Joe the Portagee sailor, or like those tarnal dumb Frenchies up Canady way, but, well, funny. He said, "My baby, in ship, get baby." He tried to say more, but his eyes went shut, and he moaned hard. I yelped, "God A'mighty! 'Scuse me, Reverend, but I was so blame upset that's just what I did say. God A'mighty, man! You mean there's a baby in that there dingful contraption?" He just moaned, so after spreading my coat around the man a little bit, I just plunged in that there river again. Reverend, I heard tell once about some tomfool idiot going over Niagara in a barrel, and I tell you it was like that when I tried crossin' that freshet to reach that contraption. I went under and down, and was whacked by floating sticks, and whirled around in the freshet. But somehow, I don't know how, except by the pure grace of God, I got across that raging torrent, and clumb up to where the crazy dingful machine was sitting. Ship, he'd called it, but that were no ship, Reverend. It was some flying dragon kind of thing. It was a real scary looking thing, but I clumb up to the little door and hauled myself in, and sure enough, there was other people in the cabin, only they was all dead. There was a lady and a man and some kind of an animal, looked like a bobcat only smaller, with a funny shaped rooster comb along its head. They all, even the cat thing, was wearing those shiny stretchy clothes. And they was all so battered and smashed, I didn't even bother to hunt for their heartbeats. I could see by a look that they was dead as a doornail. Then I heard a funny little whimpering like a kitten, and in a funny rubber cushioned thing there's a little boy baby, looked about 6 months old. He was howling lusty enough, and when I lifted him out of the cradle kind of thing, I saw why. That boy baby, he was wet, and his little arm was twisted under him. That there flying contraption must have smashed down awful hard, but that rubber hammock was so soft and cushiony all it did to him was jolt him good. I looked around, but I couldn't find anything to wrap him in, and the baby didn't have a stitch on him except a sort of a spongy paper diaper wet as sin. So I finally lifted up the lady, who had a long cape thing around her, and took the cape off her real gentle. I knew she was dead, and she wouldn't be needin' it, and that baby boy would catch his death if I took him out bare naked like that. She was probably the baby's ma. A right pretty woman she was, but smashed up something shameful. So anyhow, to make a long story short, I got that baby boy back across that Niagara Falls somehow, and laid him down by his pa. The man opened his eyes kind, and said in a choky voice, "Take care, baby." I told him I would, and said I'd try to get him up to the house where Marthy could doctor him. The man told me not to bother. "I dying," he says. "We come from planet, star up there, crash here." His voice trailed off into a language I couldn't understand, and he looked like he was praying. I bent over him and held his head on my knees real easy, and I said, "Don't worry, mister. I'll take care of your little fellow until your folks come after him. Before God I will." So the man closed his eyes, and I said, "Our Father, which art in heaven," and when I got through he was dead. I got him up on Kate, but he was cruel heavy for all he was such a tall skinny fellow. Then I wrapped that there baby up in the cape thing, and took him home and give him to Marthy. And the next day I buried the fellow in the South Medder, and next meetin' day we had the baby baptized Matthew Daniel Emmett, and brung him up just like our own kids. That's all. All, Mr. Emmett. Didn't you ever find out where that ship really came from?" "Why, Reverend, he said it came from a star. Dying men don't lie, you know that." I asked the teacher about them planets he mentioned, and she says that on one of the planets, can't rightly remember the name, March or Mark or something like that, she says some big scientist feller with a telescope saw canals on that planet, and they'd have to be pretty near as big as this here Erie Canal to see them so far off. And if they could build canals on that planet, I don't know why they couldn't build a flying machine. I went back the next day when the water was down a little to see if I couldn't get the rest of them folks and bury them, but the flying machine had broke up and washed down the crick. Marthy's still got the Cape thing. She's a powerful saving woman. We never did tell Matt, though. Might make him feel funny to think he didn't really belong to us. But, Mr. Emmett, didn't anybody ask questions about the baby, where you got it? Well, now, although they was curious, because Marthy hadn't been in the family way and they knew it, but up here folks minds their own business pretty well, and I just let them wonder. I told Lisa Grace I'd found her new little brother in the back pasture, and of course it was the truth. When Lisa Grace growed up, she thought it was just one of those yarns old folks tell the little shavers. And has Matthew ever shown any differences from the other children that you could see? Well, Reverend, not so's you could notice it. He's powerful smart, but his real pa and ma must have been right smart too to build a flying contraption that could come so far. Of course, when he was about 12 years old, he started reading folks' minds, which didn't seem exactly right. He'd tell Marthy what I was thinking and things like that. He was just at the pesky age. Lisa Grace and Minnie were both a-courtin' then, and he'd drive their boyfriends crazy telling them what Lisa Grace and Minnie were a-thinking, and tease the gals by telling them what the boys were thinking about. There weren't no harm in the boy, though. It was just all teasing, but it just weren't decent somehow, so I took him out behind the woodshed and give his britches a good dusting, just to remind him that that kind of thing weren't polite nohow. And Reverend Doane, he ain't never done it since. End of Year of the Big Thaw by Marion Zimmer Bradley. Recording by Greg Weeks.